Ever get the feeling you're talking, but nobody's really listening?
Oh, yeah.
Or that you're like surrounded by people who just don't get it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we are diving deep into the art of understanding people.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So for this deep dive, we're using Surrounded by Idiots
Okay.
by Thomas Erikson.
Yeah.
Now, before you get the wrong idea,
Right.
the book actually uses idiot playfully
Okay.
to highlight those moments when communication goes, hilariously wrong.
Yeah, or frustratingly wrong.
Or frustratingly wrong, exactly.
What I think is fascinating is his core concept.
Okay.
That communication actually happens on the listener's terms,
Oh.
not the speaker's.
Oh, interesting.
So even with the best intentions, what we say gets filtered through all of their experiences, biases, all that mental baggage.
So it's like we're all tuned to different radio stations.
Precisely.
Even if we're trying to have the same conversation.
Yeah. So to help us kind of tune in to the right frequency, Erikson introduces this color-coded system.
Okay. For understanding behavior patterns.
I like it. Colors?
Yeah. So we've got red, yellow, green, and blue.
Okay.
But before we go any further, let's just be clear. This isn't about putting people in rigid boxes.
Right. It's not like a personality horoscope.
Exactly. Yeah. It's more like a toolkit.
Yeah.
To recognize patterns, how people tend to communicate, what motivates them,
Okay.
so we can adapt.
Okay, so let's unpack these colors. First up, we've got red.
Yeah.
Picture that colleague who always cuts to the chase in meetings. The one who's all about action and results.
Yes.
They're probably a red. Driven,
Right.
decisive, straight to the point.
Straight to the point. Yep. There's even, he even mentions a red CEO who practically raced through books like it was a competition to absorb the information fastest.
Oh, wow.
That competitive streak.
Yeah.
That's very characteristic. It makes you wonder if they even highlighted the important points or just, skimmed the whole thing. Okay, next, we have yellow. Think of that friend who lights up every room they enter, the one who's always bursting with enthusiasm and optimism.
Yes.
That's yellow energy, always up for a new idea, loves to connect with people.
Yes. And actually, the book tells this great story about a yellow sales director who managed to turn a furious customer into a laughing one.
Wow.
It's that ability to diffuse tension and inspire positivity.
Wouldn't that same energy sometimes be overwhelming?
Sure.
Like, what if you need to focus and they're like bouncing off the walls?
Yeah, that's a good point. While contagious, yellow energy can also be scattered, right?
Right.
Their enthusiasm might lead them to jump between ideas without fully fleshing things out.
So maybe not the best for detailed project planning.
Right.
All right, let's move on to green. I think of that friend who's the ultimate listener.
Uh-huh.
The one who makes you feel heard and understood no matter what. Always calm, patient, puts relationships first.
Yes. So there's, Erikson has this anecdote about a green named Christopher.
Okay.
Who made a phone call. And the phone call was helpful, but it was incredibly meandering. It took forever to get to the point. But ultimately, he just wanted to be supportive.
So that's the green strength, putting people at ease.
Yes.
But is there a flip side? Could that same peacemaking tendency become a problem?
Absolutely. While, their aversion to conflict creates harmony, it can also make it hard for greens to assert themselves.
Oh.
Or address issues directly.
So you might need to be extra clear about your expectations with a green.
You might, yeah. To make sure you're both on the same page.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these colors can be helpful but also have potential pitfalls depending on the situation. All right, last but not least, we have blue.
Yeah.
Imagine that coworker who always has the most organized notes, the one who triple checks every detail before making a move. That's our blue. Analytical, precise, thrives on logic and accuracy.
He paints this hilarious picture in the book of a blue meticulously assembling furniture. Like measuring every piece, wiping down every surface.
Oh my God.
It's that attention to detail and need for order.
But I can also see how that could be perceived negatively, right?
Yeah.
Like being seen as nitpicky or taking forever to make a decision.
You're hitting on a key point. While blues strive for perfection, their analytical nature can also make them appear overly critical or hesitant.
Right.
It's all about context. And remember, no one is just one color.
That's a good reminder. We all have a blend of these colors, right?
Absolutely.
Like I can see bits of myself in each one.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the dominant patterns
Right.
in ourselves and others, not putting people in rigid categories.
So we've got our color palette laid out. Red, yellow, green, and blue. But how do we actually use this knowledge?
Yeah.
It can't be as simple as like slapping a color label on someone and calling it a day, right?
It's about understanding the nuances of each color, their strengths, potential pitfalls, and how to adjust our communication style. Think of it like learning a new language.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm dealing with a red.
Okay.
What are the key things to keep in mind?
With reds, it's all about being direct, concise, and results-oriented. Cut to the chase, present the facts, and avoid getting bogged down in emotional details or small talk.
So basically, skip the chit-chat and get right to the point. Noted. But how do you handle a situation where you need to give a right constructive criticism? I imagine that could be a bit tricky.
Yeah, it can be, but it's not impossible. The key is to focus on the impact of the issue and the proposed solution. Don't make it personal and avoid beating around the bush. Be clear, specific, and provide actionable steps they can take to improve.
Okay, so be direct but respectful.
Yeah, got it.
Now, what about yellows? How do you keep up with their energetic, fast-paced communication style?
With yellows, enthusiasm and positivity are key. Mirror their energy, focus on the big picture, and be prepared to brainstorm and bounce ideas around. Visuals can be really helpful too.
So maybe use a whiteboard or some colorful charts to capture their attention.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to inject a little humor or fun into the conversation. Yellows thrive in environments where people are enjoying themselves.
Makes sense. But what about follow-through? I imagine it's easy for yellows to get swept up in the excitement of a new idea and then kind of lose steam.
That's a common pitfall. They might be brimming with enthusiasm initially, but then struggle with the details and the follow-through. That's where you come in.
So I need to be the one to, reel them back in and make sure things actually get done.
Precisely. Help them channel their energy by breaking down tasks into smaller steps, setting clear deadlines, and providing regular check-ins to keep them on track.
Okay, that's helpful. Now let's talk about greens. How do you navigate their need for harmony and, conflict avoidance?
Right. With greens, it's all about building trust and rapport. Take the time to listen actively to their concerns, acknowledge their feelings, and create a safe space for open and honest communication.
So basically be the opposite of a bull in a china shop.
Exactly. Approach them with empathy and understanding. And if you need to address a difficult issue, do it in a way that feels supportive and non-threatening.
So focus on finding a solution together rather than pointing fingers or placing blame. Got it. But what if a green is being too passive? What if that's actually hindering progress? How do you nudge them out of their comfort zone without creating conflict?
That's a delicate balance. You need to be direct and clear about your expectations, but do it in a way that respects their need for harmony. Frame it as a collaborative effort to achieve a shared goal.
Okay, so be assertive, but understanding.
Yeah.
And finally, how do you communicate effectively with a blue? They seem like they'd be the toughest nut to crack.
Blues can be a challenge, but once you understand their communication style, it's actually quite straightforward. They value logic, accuracy, and thoroughness. So, when presenting an idea to a blue, come prepared with all the facts, figures, and data points.
So basically, treat it like a court case. I need to present my argument with irrefutable evidence.
Exactly. And be prepared to answer their questions in detail.
Right.
Blues are naturally curious and want to understand every nuance and implication.
Right.
They might seem skeptical or even critical at times.
Yeah.
But it's not personal. They're just trying to process the information logically.
So don't take it personally if they poke holes in my brilliant idea.
Right.
They just want to make sure it's airtight.
Precisely. Patience is key with blues.
Yeah.
Don't try to rush them into a decision or force them to be more expressive than they're comfortable being.
Gotcha.
Respect their need for space and time.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, remember how we talked about those drinking glasses?
Yeah.
As an analogy for how people handle stress. Let's dive a little deeper into that.
It's a powerful way to visualize how stress affects each color differently and how to better understand their reactions. Remember, it's not about excusing bad behavior, but rather gaining insights into the why behind it.
Right. So refresh my memory. Reds were the shot glasses, right?
Exactly. Their stress container is small, but fills up quickly. They might have explosive outbursts of anger, but it dissipates just as fast.
So a quick burst of steam and then it's over.
Right.
Okay, what about yellows?
Yellows are like drinking glasses. Their stress container is larger, but it fills up more gradually.
Okay.
They might seem fine on the surface, but the stress builds until it eventually spills over.
So it's important to pay attention to those early warning signs. What are some things to look out for?
With yellows, increased talkativeness, distractibility, and a tendency to jump from one thing to the next can be indicators that their stress container is nearing capacity.
So if they start, like, talking a mile a minute and bouncing off the walls, it might be time for a break.
Precisely. Help them channel that nervous energy by giving them a specific task to focus on, or encouraging them to take a walk or do something physical to release that pent-up tension.
Okay, what about greens? Their stress container was the bottle, right?
Exactly. It's large and has a narrow neck. It takes a lot to fill it up, but when it does, it's a sudden and overwhelming flood.
So they bottle things up until they explode. Yikes.
Essentially, yes. They tend to internalize stress, appearing calm and collected on the surface, but underneath, the pressure is building. And when that bottle finally overflows, it can be intense.
So how do we prevent that from happening?
Right.
How do we help greens release that pressure before it reaches a breaking point?
It's all about creating a safe and supportive environment where they feel comfortable expressing their concerns and frustrations. Regular check-ins, active listening, and a willingness to address issues head-on can go a long way in preventing those emotional floods.
So basically, encourage them to open up and share what's bothering them before it becomes a tidal wave. And lastly, what about blues? They were the sealed containers, right?
Yes, blues internalize stress, becoming withdrawn, hypercritical, and even more focused on details and flaws.
So they basically shut down and retreat into their own minds.
Essentially, yes. They try to contain the stress, but that can backfire, leading to a buildup of pressure that can be detrimental to their well-being.
So how do we help blues manage stress in a healthy way?
It's about acknowledging their need for space and time to process information. Don't pressure them to share their feelings or rush them into decisions. Instead, provide them with the information they need, answer their questions thoroughly, and give them the time and space they need to arrive at a conclusion on their own terms.
Okay, so be patient and understanding. Let them process things at their own pace. Now, Erikson shares this really interesting observation in the book about how these colors interact in a social setting. He talks about this company party where he witnessed some fascinating shifts in behavior, especially as the social lubricants started flowing.
Ooh, interesting.
Right. It's a great example of how behavior patterns can be amplified or even altered depending on, the context and the social dynamics. So tell me about this party. What did Erikson observe?
Okay, so he described seeing the different colors kind of gravitate toward their own kind.
Okay.
The reds were huddled together, talking shop, making deals, and engaging in some friendly competition.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Always on, even at a party.
Yeah, exactly. The yellows, of course, were the life of the party. Flitting from group to group, telling jokes, sharing stories, keeping the energy high.
Soaking up the spotlight. And what about the greens? Where were they hiding out?
The greens were gathered in a quieter corner, engaging in heartfelt conversations, offering support and encouragement.
Seeking refuge from the chaos.
And generally creating a cozy and harmonious atmosphere.
And the blues? I bet they were off in a corner, like, analyzing everyone's behavior.
Well, they were definitely more reserved,
Yeah.
observing the scene from a distance. Perhaps engaging in some deep conversations with a select few, but mostly preferring to stay out of the spotlight.
Sticking to their comfort zone.
Yeah.
But then things started to get interesting as the night went on, right?
Exactly. As those social lubricants flowed, Erikson noticed some unexpected shifts in behavior.
Like what?
Some of the yellows, who were initially the life of the party, became more introspective.
Oh, wow.
And even melancholic as the evening progressed.
Wow, that's surprising. I thought yellows thrived on social interaction.
They do, but even the most extroverted individuals need time to recharge and process their experiences. Constant stimulation can be overwhelming.
Even for those who initially seem to thrive on it.
Gotcha.
So even yellows have their limits. That's a good reminder. What other shifts in behavior did Erikson observe?
He described witnessing a normally stern and demanding red bank director having a heartfelt conversation with a group of green administrators.
Oh, wow.
He was expressing appreciation, acknowledging his shortcomings, and even admitting to feeling insecure at times.
That's amazing. Who knew that tough exterior hid such vulnerability?
It's a reminder that even the most assertive and dominant individuals have moments of self-doubt and a need for connection.
So the social lubricants helped break down some of those walls
Yeah.
and allowed for more genuine interactions.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the greens? Did they loosen up a bit too?
They did. Erikson observed the greens finding their voice as the evening wore on. Emboldened by the social lubricants, they started to express their opinions more forcefully, even challenging the red bank director on his management style.
Whoa, That's a bold move for a green.
It is, but it shows that even the most peace-loving and harmonious individuals have boundaries and limits.
So everyone was a bit out of character that night. What's the takeaway from all of this?
I think it reinforces the idea that behavior patterns are not fixed or absolute.
Right.
They can shift and change depending on the context, the social dynamics, and even the level of social lubrication involved.
It's a reminder that we're all complex individuals with a range of emotions and behaviors. The color codes are just a starting point,
Right.
a way to understand general tendencies and preferences. But ultimately, we're all capable of surprising each other. Now let's shift gears and talk about a situation that most of us dread: delivering bad news.
Yeah.
It's never easy, is it? Whether it's giving critical feedback to a colleague, or breaking difficult news to a friend, or having that tough conversation with a loved one, it's something we all struggle with.
Absolutely. It's natural to want to avoid conflict or sugarcoat things, but as Erikson points out, delivering bad news poorly can be far more damaging than delivering it well.
Oh, yeah.
It can erode trust, damage relationships, and create unnecessary stress and anxiety.
So how can we do it better?
Well, Erikson provides a framework for delivering bad news effectively, regardless of the recipient's behavior pattern. And it all starts with preparation.
Okay, so before I even open my mouth, I need to have a plan.
Precisely. Before you even initiate the conversation, take the time to gather your thoughts, organize your message, and anticipate the recipient's reaction. Think about the specific points you want to make, the evidence you want to present, and the desired outcome you hope to achieve.
So it's not just about what I say, but how I say it and what I hope to achieve by saying it.
Exactly. And this is where understanding behavior patterns comes in handy.
Okay.
Consider the recipient's color. How might they react to the news?
Right.
What are their communication preferences?
Yeah.
How can you frame the message in a way that resonates with them?
So tailoring my approach based on their color. Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. What else do I need to keep in mind?
Once you've prepared, choose a time and place that's private.
Right.
And allows for a focused conversation. Avoid delivering bad news in public or in a rushed or chaotic environment.
So no dropping bombshells in the middle of the office or during family dinner.
Yeah.
Got it. What about the actual delivery? Any tips on how to say the words?
When you're ready to deliver the news, get straight to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Don't beat around the bush or try to sugarcoat the message.
Right.
Be direct, be honest, and be clear.
Okay.
But also be respectful and empathetic.
So honesty with a side of compassion.
Exactly. Acknowledge the recipient's feelings and validate their perspective. Let them know that you understand that the news is difficult and that you're there to support them.
Okay, so acknowledge their feelings, but don't dwell on them.
Got it.
What happens next?
Then listen.
Okay.
Give them the space to process the information, ask questions, and express their emotions.
Yeah.
Avoid interrupting or trying to defend your position. Just listen actively and try to understand their perspective.
So let them vent, even if it's directed at me.
To a certain extent, yes. It's important to let them express their emotions without feeling judged or dismissed.
Okay. Once they've had a chance to vent, what's next?
Once they've had a chance to process the news, focus on solutions, what can be done to address the issue,
Right.
what are the next steps? How can you support them moving forward?
So shift the focus from the problem to the solution.
Exactly.
And how do we wrap things up?
End the conversation on a positive note.
Okay.
Reinforce your support. Express your confidence in their ability to handle the situation, and end the conversation with a sense of hope and optimism.
Okay, so a little pep talk to send them on their way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do we adapt this framework for each specific color? Let's start with reds.
Okay.
How do you deliver bad news to a red?
With reds, remember, they value directness, efficiency, and results.
Mm-hmm.
So when delivering bad news to a red, get straight to the point.
Yeah.
Present the facts clearly and concisely without sugarcoating or emotional appeals.
So no beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Just rip off the Band-Aid.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Focus on the impact of the issue and the proposed solution.
Right.
Be prepared to answer their questions directly and confidently.
And be ready for them to take immediate action. Reds are doers, not dwellers.
Yeah.
Okay, what about yellows? How do we deliver bad news to someone who's naturally optimistic and upbeat?
With yellows, it's important to acknowledge their feelings and validate their perspective. They might react emotionally, so be prepared to listen patiently and offer reassurance.
Okay.
Avoid overwhelming them with too many details or dwelling on the negative aspects of the situation.
So keep it light and focus on the positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Focus on the big picture and highlight the potential opportunities that might arise from the situation. Yellows are optimistic and forward-thinking. They need to see a path forward, even in the face of adversity.
And don't forget the humor. A little levity can go a long way in diffusing tension.
Absolutely. Now, how about greens? How do we deliver bad news to someone who's naturally conflict avoidant and sensitive?
I imagine that requires a much gentler approach.
You're right. With greens, it's all about being empathetic and supportive. Take the time to build rapport and establish a sense of trust before delivering the bad news.
Okay.
Focus on the impact of the issue on the team or the relationship.
Okay.
And avoid direct confrontation or placing blame.
So be gentle, be understanding, and focus on finding a solution together. What about blues? How do we deliver bad news to someone who's analytical and detail-oriented?
With blues, it's all about the facts, the data, and the logic. Present the information clearly and thoroughly with supporting evidence and a well-defined rationale.
Right.
Be prepared to answer their questions in detail and address their concerns logically.
So basically, treat it like a scientific presentation.
Exactly.
Right.
And be patient. Blues need time to process information and arrive at their own conclusions.
Yeah.
Don't rush them or try to force them to react emotionally.
Okay, so be thorough, be logical, and be patient. Now let's revisit that team project from the book.
Yes.
Remember how Erikson described those 4 color-coded teams?
Yeah.
Tackling a project.
Yes, it was a great example of how understanding these color codes can help us navigate the challenges of teamwork and create more effective collaborations.
So remind us how each team approached the project and what their strengths and weaknesses were.
The red team, as you might expect, was all about action and results.
Right.
They were quick to make decisions, delegate tasks, and push forward aggressively. Their strength was their efficiency.
Makes sense.
And their ability to get things done quickly. However, their weakness was their tendency to overlook details and bulldoze over the concerns of others.
So a bit too much my way or the highway. What about the yellow team?
The yellow team was full of energy and enthusiasm. They were great at brainstorming ideas, coming up with creative solutions, and keeping the team motivated. Their strength was their infectious optimism and their ability to think outside the box.
Okay, so lots of sizzle, but not enough steak.
However, their weakness was their lack of focus and their tendency to get sidetracked easily.
What about the green team?
The green team was all about harmony and collaboration. They were supportive, empathetic, and great at building consensus. Their strength was their ability to create a positive and harmonious team environment. However, their weakness was their slow pace and their aversion to conflict, which sometimes hindered their progress.
So too nice for their own good. And lastly, what about the blue team?
The blue team was meticulous and detail-oriented. They were great at researching, analyzing data, and ensuring that everything was accurate and well-documented. Their strength was their thoroughness and their ability to identify potential problems before they arose. However, their weakness was their slow decision-making process and their tendency to get bogged down in the details.
So paralysis by analysis. It sounds like each team had its own unique set of strengths and weaknesses. What's the takeaway from all of this?
The key takeaway is that diverse teams, when managed effectively, can be incredibly powerful.
It's about recognizing and appreciating those different strengths and finding ways to leverage them effectively. So it's like having a superhero team, each with their own superpowers and kryptonite. But instead of fighting crime, they're, tackling projects and trying to understand each other.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy. And just like with a superhero team, the key to success lies in recognizing and harnessing those diverse strengths while mitigating potential weaknesses.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we create that kind of team synergy where everyone feels valued and empowered to, contribute their best work?
Well, it starts with awareness. Everyone on the team needs to understand their own behavior patterns, the patterns of their teammates. And they need to appreciate how those patterns can both enhance and hinder team performance.
So self-awareness is key. But how do we get everyone on the same page? I can't imagine it's easy to get a bunch of reds, yellows, greens, and blues to agree on anything.
You're right. It can be a challenge, but it's not impossible. One effective approach is to have everyone take a behavior assessment, like the one Erikson describes in the book.
So basically give everyone a personality test and then let the fireworks begin.
Not exactly. It's not about labeling people or putting them in boxes.
Right.
It's about providing a common language for discussing behavior patterns.
Okay.
And a framework for understanding how those patterns can impact team dynamics.
Okay, so it's a tool for understanding, not judging. Got it.
Yeah.
What happens after everyone takes the assessment?
The next step is to have an open and honest discussion about the results. What are the team's strengths?
Yeah.
What are the potential blind spots? How can we leverage those diverse perspectives to achieve our goals?
So a team therapy session where everyone gets to air their grievances and hopefully come to a mutual understanding.
Well, hopefully it's a bit more productive than that.
Right.
The goal is to create a safe space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, even if those ideas differ from their teammates.
Okay, so open communication is key. But what about conflict? It seems inevitable that you're going to have clashes when you have such, different personalities working together.
Conflict is natural.
Yeah.
And it can actually be productive if it's managed effectively.
Right.
The key is to establish ground rules for communication and conflict resolution.
It's like a code of conduct for disagreeing respectfully.
Exactly. Teach team members how to express their concerns constructively, listen actively to opposing viewpoints, and find solutions that benefit the team as a whole.
Sounds good in theory, but how do we make this work in practice?
Well, one effective strategy is to assign roles based on behavior patterns. For example, a red might be a great project manager, driving the team forward and keeping everyone on track.
Makes sense. They're all about action and results.
A yellow might excel in a creative role, brainstorming ideas
Right.
and bringing enthusiasm to the team. A green could be a fantastic facilitator, ensuring that everyone feels heard and valued. And a blue would be a natural fit for a quality control role, ensuring accuracy and attention to detail.
So play to each color's strengths and create a team that's well-rounded and balanced.
Exactly. And remember, leadership plays a crucial role in creating a cohesive and high-performing team.
Okay, so what does a good leader look like in this context?
Effective leaders in diverse teams need to be adaptable, empathetic, and skilled communicators. They need to be able to recognize and appreciate those different behavior patterns and create an environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
So it's about being a chameleon, like adapting your style to meet the needs of different team members.
Exactly. And it's about being a coach, providing guidance, support, and encouragement to help each team member reach their full potential.
So it's a lot more than just like barking orders and expecting everyone to fall in line.
Absolutely. It's about creating a shared vision, fostering a sense of purpose, and empowering team members to take ownership of their work.
So it sounds like building a high-performing, diverse team is a complex process.
It is,
It's not something that happens overnight.
It takes time, effort, and a willingness to embrace those differences and find ways to leverage them effectively. But the payoff can be tremendous.
Okay, so let's talk about that payoff. What are some of the benefits of having a diverse team, aside from, the warm and fuzzy feeling of inclusivity?
Diverse teams, when managed effectively, can achieve extraordinary results. They bring a wider range of perspectives, generate more creative solutions, and adapt more effectively to changing circumstances.
So it's not just about being politically correct, it's about being more innovative and competitive.
Exactly. A study by McKinsey & Company found that companies in the top quartile for ethnic and racial diversity in management were 35% more likely to have financial returns above their national industry medians.
Wow, that's a significant advantage. So diversity isn't just like a feel-good initiative, it's a smart business strategy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about ethnic and racial diversity. It's about diversity of thought, experience, and perspective. When you bring people with different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, and different approaches to problem solving together, you create a dynamic and innovative environment.
So it's about harnessing the power of those differences to create something truly unique and powerful.
Precisely. Now, while there are many benefits to diverse teams, it's important to acknowledge that there can also be challenges.
Okay, let's talk about those challenges. What are some of the potential pitfalls we need to be aware of?
One common challenge is miscommunication. When people from different backgrounds and with different communication styles come together,
Right.
there's more room for misunderstandings and misinterpretations.
So it's back to that idea of speaking different languages.
Exactly.
Even when we're using the same words.
Exactly. And it's not just about the words we use. It's about our nonverbal communication, our tone of voice, our body language, and our cultural norms.
So a simple gesture or facial expression could be interpreted completely differently depending on someone's cultural background.
Precisely. Another challenge is conflict. When you have diverse perspectives, it's inevitable that there will be disagreements.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Conflict can lead to growth and innovation.
You're right. But it's important to manage conflict effectively. If conflict is left unresolved or handled poorly, it can lead to resentment, division, and ultimately a breakdown in team performance.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether, but about having the skills and strategies to navigate those disagreements constructively.
Yeah.
What are some other challenges we need to be aware of?
Another common challenge is groupthink. This occurs when a team is so focused on maintaining harmony and avoiding conflict that they fail to critically evaluate ideas or consider alternative perspectives.
So it's like everyone's so afraid of rocking the boat
Exactly.
that they end up going along with a bad idea just to, keep the peace.
Exactly. And this can be especially problematic in diverse teams where people might be hesitant to speak up for fear of being perceived as disrespectful or insensitive.
So how do we prevent groupthink from happening?
It's crucial to create a culture of psychological safety where everyone feels comfortable expressing their opinions, even if those opinions are unpopular or controversial.
So basically make it clear that it's okay to disagree as long as it's done respectfully.
Exactly.
Are there any other challenges we need to be aware of?
One final challenge I'd like to mention is unconscious bias.
Okay, let's talk about that. What exactly is unconscious bias?
Unconscious bias refers to the stereotypes and prejudices that we all hold, even if we're not aware of them. These biases can influence our perceptions, our decisions, and our interactions with others.
So it's like having these hidden filters in our minds that distort how we see the world.
Exactly. And these biases can be particularly problematic in diverse teams because they can lead to unfair treatment, discrimination, and a lack of opportunity for certain groups.
So even if we have the best intentions, we might still be making decisions that are influenced by our unconscious biases.
Exactly. That's why it's crucial to be aware of these biases and to actively work to mitigate them.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we combat something that we're not even aware of?
There are several strategies that can help. One is to educate ourselves about unconscious bias. The more we understand about these biases, the better equipped we are to recognize them in ourselves and others.
So knowledge is power. What are some other strategies?
Another strategy is to create a culture of inclusivity where everyone feels valued and respected.
So basically create an environment where everyone feels safe to be themselves.
Exactly.
And to share their unique perspectives.
Exactly. And this can be achieved through a variety of initiatives such as diversity training, mentorship programs, and employee resource groups.
So it's about creating a structure and a system that supports diversity and inclusion.
Precisely. And lastly, it's important to hold ourselves and each other accountable. We need to be willing to call out biased behavior when we see it. And to work together to create a more equitable and just workplace.
So speak up and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. That's great advice. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of human behavior and teamwork, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the most important message is this. Diversity is a strength, not a weakness. When we embrace our differences and learn to communicate effectively, we can achieve extraordinary things.
That's a powerful message. And for those who want to dive even deeper into this topic, I highly recommend grabbing a copy of Surrounded by Idiots. It's a fun, insightful, and surprisingly practical guide to understanding human behavior and building more effective relationships.
It's a reminder that we're all a bit idiotic in our own way. But that's what makes us human.
And by understanding those idiocies, we can learn to navigate the complexities of human interaction with more grace, empathy, and effectiveness.
So embrace the idiots in your life. They might just surprise you.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
恭喜你又听完了一本书，订阅以便不错过更多精彩节目，也别忘了分享给你的朋友，一起快乐听书学英语。